Well, it's absolutely fantastic to have as my guest this afternoon on Macquarie Street Political Podcast, Jake Thrupp. For those who are watching live, you're getting this as it comes, and for those who'll be watching this next week, you'll see it on the Macquarie Street Podcast. But Jake, it's fantastic to have you with me. Jake is the author of this, or he's the editor of this anthology of political essays about Australia's future. Australia Tomorrow, it's called. It's excellent reading, and I was really keen to get him on the show to talk about this. Jake is the producer for Alan Jones, who's just launched into a new venture with Australian Digital Holdings. And I thought, Jake, perhaps you could correct my introduction of you and just tell us a little bit about this latest exciting venture that is literally only a week or two old with the great man, Alan Jones.
Yeah, thanks, Lyle. And it is good to be on here. Look, what we've launched is a new digital television show. So essentially, bypass the networks, and we just felt that the way to get the message out there is exactly like what you're doing right now, direct to the people. I think people follow broadcasters; they don't necessarily follow, organisations or a channel per se. We are at a critical time where people trust certain people, or they know what views they've got. I'm a firm believer in that. That's inherent in them, that they know sort of where they sit on the political fence, and they want to follow that person. So what we're doing is we're doing Alan Jones direct to the people, and it's Monday to Thursday, 8 p.m. And you can watch it on Facebook, on the Alan Jones Australia Facebook page. You can watch it on YouTube, Alan Jones Australia YouTube, or alanjones.com.au. So our first week was obviously we had a few tech glitches, which was to be expected.
You crashed on your first night, I hear.
We did.
Which is a great problem to have when the internet is overloaded with people trying to get to your show.
Well, that's the point. There was a few out there sort of laughing, but I think it's a good problem to have when you've got 350,000 people trying to click on one website in a window of about 10 minutes. Look, we always thought there was a bit of a following there. That is a massive following. Yeah. So the first show had around 175,000 views, which was excellent. We had the New South Wales Premier Dominic Perrottet on. We had Matt Canavan on, the Queensland National Senator, and we've had a really good week. We will broadcast Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday next week. Take a little break over Christmas, and we'll be back in the new year. And it's part of a company called Australian Digital Holdings. So we hope to introduce more content in the new year, more broadcasters, and we're all about strong opinions, essentially.
Look, I think it's a really exciting development. This is the alternative media really coming into its own. We all love Sky News, and I've been an admirer of Alan,
definitely,
from his Sky News days. Disappointed that he's not there anymore, but it's fantastic that these platforms now exist. Jake, I was really keen to get you on here when I heard about this book, as I mentioned at the start. And I heard you on a Connor Court launch of the book, Connor Court being the publisher of this book, great conservative publisher of centre-right ideas in this country, and thank goodness for them. But I was really impressed with you as a young thinker. Obviously, you've been mentored by someone like Alan Jones, who's got a very sharp mind on the centre-right, and not everyone, mate. We probably all have our agreements, disagreements with Alan. As you say, he's got strong opinions. I agree with most of what he says. I really have a great affinity for him, coming from Auckland. I grew up in Toowoomba, which is the big smoke just to the east of Auckland. So I love where he come from and his roots. But I love the ideas that you've put together here and the writers you've assembled. And you say that you've put this book together as a way to sort of push back on the nihilism of contemporary Australian life. Nihilism's a word that's not used very much. Just unpack that for us, and the reason why you put these writers and these ideas together.
Well, Lyle, I have felt for a long time that we are breeding this massive cultural self-doubt. We are basically, it's a very clumsy thing to say, but we're basically teaching people to hate our country. That's what I see. I do see that. That's just my honest opinion. People out there may disagree with that, but when I see people protesting in the street, students skipping school for climate strikes, this sort of stuff, I mean, this is a result of people not having faith in something, or faith in a religion or something. So they are adopting these causes with this religiosity, and therefore placards, this sort of stuff. And I just think that's not what we're about. We've got a lot to be proud of. We've done a lot of, we've had many great achievements, essentially. Sure, there's historical things which are uncomfortable, events which occurred, but we learn from them and we move on. I think to judge today's standards, or judge a past event by today's standards, is not the right thing to do.
Yep.
So I just see, I see people just not passionate, not patriotic about who we are, the country we are. And that's why I felt it was so important to give us a fresh sense of mission. And that's why I thought, well, I was speaking with Tony Abbott actually about it. I said, what do you think of this? What do you think I should do? I'm thinking about putting a book together. He said, great idea. Go for it. Go for it. I thought, yeah, okay, I will. So I've met a lot of really great thinkers, centre-right thinkers over the last 3-4 years. Since I'm actually from Tweed Heads. So I moved down about 3 or 4 years down to Sydney. And look, I've met a lot of great people. So I made a few phone calls, met with a few people and said, hey, I'd like you to write in this book. I don't want it to be basically pessimistic, or I don't want it to sort of dump on the current government of the day. That's not what it's about. It's actually about, what does the next decade of centre-right governance look like? How do we modernize, but how do we also remain conservative and preserve what needs to be preserved, essentially? And how do we teach people to be proud, to be patriotic? And what's the vision? I mean, I look at the day-to-day politics and I don't see any vision. I see things that are just put in the too hard basket. And instead of going out there and into the sort of the marketplace and saying, hey, we are conservatives, we're proud to be conservatives. We aren't radical or rat bags or anything. We believe in certain things, and this is our take on this debate. So let's shape it in that way. Instead, the left come out, they're always on the front foot, and we have to defend everything. And I'm just so over that. I think we really need to mobilize ourselves. And I would hope that this book, Australia Tomorrow, acts as a manifesto for a future coalition government.
Look, I think it does that, Jake, and I totally agree with you. We are on the back foot all the time, and it's fantastic to see things like this, which are front foot initiatives and produced by someone who's obviously, you're a bit younger than me, but I think you represent the next generation. But some of the writers you've got Tony Abbott, who you mentioned, obviously Alan Jones, Morris Newman, and I want to come to his essay in a moment, but he's also the chairman of Australian Digital Holdings, the new platform that Alan's working on. So some great collaborations there. You've got Amanda Stoker, Gina Reinhart, Campbell Newman, Brenda Nelson, who I heard speak last night at the John Howard oration.
The Menzies thing.
Menzies Research Institute, fantastic. So many others, Rita Hanapai, Jacinta Price, Indigenous issues. I mean, Adam Crichton, his essay was a little bit controversial for me as a conservative, but you mentioned that, so great writers, I really encourage people to get hold of this book. You mentioned that it's that our opponents in this culture war have a religious fervour. I was really impressed on the second night of Alan's new show on Australian Digital Holdings, him making a full-throated defence of Christianity and its place in Australia. Now, obviously, I'm a Christian. As far as I know, I don't think Alan is, but he's always someone who has defended Christian values and the Christian ethos, and I don't presume to know where you stand. But the thing that I'm picking up from centre-right commentators like Alan and so many others, so many in this book, is that our Christian culture, our Judeo-Christian heritage, is something that we really need to stand up for, because that is the basis of our country. It is under attack.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, well, I went to a Catholic primary school, St. Anthony's in Kingscliff. I went to St. Joseph's in Benora for high school, and then I actually finished off at Lindisfarne Anglican Grammar School. So, look, and I was an altar server. We attended mass. So it it really builds character, that faith. I think it's so important to have faith. And again, I think the trashing of the constant trashing of Christianity by those in the elite side of the media and in politics, the political class, where they sort of pretend that it doesn't shape people and shape our culture and community. I think that's really it has not helped us. It has not helped us. And again, that's what this nihilism in contemporary life is now. It's for people need to belong, Lyle, as you know, they need to belong. And when they feel they don't belong, they sort of get in their groups and they all go, well, how can we band together and believe in something? Well, I mean, everyone needs a purpose as to why they wake up in the morning. Yeah. And there's a lot of people out there, unfortunately, whose purpose is to cancel people who they don't agree with, to, again, write placards, often misspelt, and go into the city for the day and hold them up and do their bit. And I mean, I don't hate these people either. I mean, I actually feel a bit sorry for them that they feel that that's what they need to do each day. That's their purpose. And that's the thing with the conservatives in general, or even coalition supporters, diehard voters for our side, because we are waking up each day and people have families to attend to, they've got work to go to, they have a purpose. They actually don't have enough time to mobilize like the left do. Yeah. And that's why I think I feel I often feel down about how lethargic our side is. Yeah. And we are there. I mean, that's where Scott Morrison is correct. There are the quiet Australians. We are a majority, a silent majority, and we come out when we need to come out and support things. But for the day-to-day, the narrative always looks like that the left are on the winning side, and they actually aren't. They actually aren't. And that's why I'm very grateful to Connor Court Publishing for that. They really jumped on this idea. Anthony jumped on this idea. He loved the idea of it. And we got it out there, and I think we've sold about 6,000, 7,000 copies.
Wow, mate, that's fantastic. Yeah, and Anthony, of course,
good for Australia.
That is fantastic. That's in sort of bestseller territory. So congratulations on that, and well done. You mentioned Anthony Capello. He and his wife Julie run Connor Court there up there in Brisbane. Fantastic people. Jake, as I looked at the essays, I sort of discerned what I think are sort of three key themes that are coming through the book, and you've already touched on one when you mentioned cancel culture. So this idea of freedom, really important. I think we all know how the left is trying to cancel conservative viewpoints. But I think the other theme is prosperity. You mentioned the importance, for us to have a good economic base, the energy debate, which is really gutting our prosperity. And you had some writers talking about the nuclear issue, nuclear energy. Just unpack that a little for us and how that can undergird our prosperity.
Well, I really believe in nuclear energy, and I actually struggle. I struggle to basically handle why I struggle to understand why we don't touch it. It's funny, actually, I spoke with a federal MP about half an hour ago. And he said the same thing. I said, mate, why don't we touch nuclear energy ever? I mean, we never want to. That's the future. Why don't we, again, get on the front foot where we aren't sort of rat bags and troglodytes. We can show that conservatives are forward thinking. And this is it, these small modular reactors, and you place them in regional areas, and you foster commerce there, and you generate very decent paying jobs, which is it's where it's all going. And we have all these coal-fired power plants being decommissioned, the rule should be if we are going to decommission a coal-fired power plant, well then we need to open up an SMR, a small modular reactor somewhere.
Well, you could stick one where the decommissioned coal-fired plant was, if you felt we needed to stop coal, because it's already hooked up to the grid. Yeah,
they don't need to be near water catchments. And I think, and actually what he said to me, actually, which I think is very true, is that the political class and the left, again, have just sort of, they come out with this general and broad argument, no, the Australian people don't want it. And that's because they're ideologically opposed to it. But if you put that in a poll, I mean, the public support is there for nuclear energy.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we sort of why we tiptoe around it. I think we should really, really embrace it.
Yeah. No, well, that's an important essay to read in the book there.
So Matt Canavan in the book,
of course,
writes about that. And actually, it's funny how that happened, because I actually had the final draft, and I did one final read through, and I finished it, and I thought, but this is a book about tomorrow, and people have touched on nuclear energy, but no one has actually gone into nuclear energy. So I quickly called Matt up and I said, hey, can you get something to me in the next few days? I want to put this to print. I need something on nuclear energy. And so that was his contribution. That's how that came about.
Fantastic. We mentioned Maurice Newman before, who I just think is, one of the great Australians, and he's really driving a lot of common sense ideas. If you read his opinion pieces in the Australian, etc., and his article here, his essay here is amazing about the influence of the Chinese Communist Party. So the other theme of this book, we mentioned freedom, prosperity. Security is the other really, really big one, and just the menace of the Chinese Communist Party, and I'd probably overlay that with also his comments about Klaus Schwab and the World Economic Forum and what they're doing, and perhaps even being in cahoots with the Chinese Communist Party to try and bring about some great reset, which all sounds very conspiratorial, and I don't want to go down.
It's not though.
But it's not. It's in our face, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah, no, totally. And just on Morris is a great Australian. He is such a patriot. I do consider him a mentor. He's a really good person, and so humble too. And look, what he touches on in his chapter about the Great Reset, like what we just said, it is happening. We see the political class wanting to centralize power more and more. We saw this during the restrictions, what we just had. I mean, we had a Liberal Party virtually embrace curfews, even though the Victorian police down in Victoria said, no, these don't work. They don't work. Yeah. Yet we had some in the New South Wales Liberal Party think this is such a great idea. And it's just about, it's this control by the political class over the hoi polloi. And that's what the Great Reset basically is about. It's about wealth redistribution, all this sort of stuff. And it is a very frightening thought. And, the militarization of the police as well. I mean, never before COVID, we had never seen really, unless there were major events that had happened, we had never seen politicians and sort of police standing side by side all the time. Whereas we had that on our screens every day. Yeah. We had soldiers in the streets. And I mean, that resembles places like Myanmar, not Australia.
Yeah, I think one of the chilling images of COVID was Victorian police firing rubber bullets into protesters, regardless of where you stand on vaccines and all that sort of stuff.
It's got nothing to do with that. It's just about freedom and about way over the top, heavy-handedness. Yeah.
So Morris's essay, just getting back to that, the link then between, the disturbing sort of parallels between what the World Economic Forum under Klaus Schwab, what they think should be our future, you will own nothing and be happy, more authoritarian involvement of the state, and then the model that the Chinese Communist Party used to govern their people. And the World Economic Forum's embracing of Xi Jinping, giving him a platform there earlier in the year to speak. I mean, this is obscene, isn't it? What are these globalist elites up to?
I think it's funny, I think it must be a mission to further impoverish the poor. I mean, it'd have to be climate change, all this sort of stuff. So they all go on. I mean, that's exactly what we just saw in Glasgow. Every billionaire was there, multi-millionaires, all this sort of stuff. Jets. I think there was something. I forget even the figure of jets. All these private jets rocking up. Yet they're all sort of supposed to be into climate change and let's ban air travel and all this sort of stuff. It's a very hypocritical. It's a very hypocritical issue. The whole climate change debate. Look, the
CCP World Economic Forum link there, that to me is disturbing. And climate change is, of course, tied up in all of that, even though the CCP are still building coal-fired power stations like there's no tomorrow. But it seems like there's this
When they're
the global elites,
expansionist.
they're expansionists,
That's
they're
right. They're
disillusioned with liberal
expansionist.
democracy, and it's almost like they want us to hate where we've come from and legitimize other models of governance. Perhaps
Yes.
the authoritarian model that the CCP.
Well, they keep chipping away, don't they? They
Yeah,
chip away. They're trying to erode. They're trying to erode sort of the Western, world in that sense, and they dump on us whenever they can.
They do.
It's a real worry, and then we've got weak American leadership too. So I don't really know where we turn here, but it's good that Peter Dutton's doing an excellent job as defense minister, and at least he's talking about it instead of ignoring it and pretending it doesn't exist. Because a lot of people going, "Hey, China, look at what they're up to."
Absolutely, and he's speaking the truth, and the left is setting their hair on fire. Our time's racing away. I'm really enjoying this conversation, and I'm hoping you've got time for a little bit longer, Jake. But Amanda Stoker's essay was fantastic. Senator Amanda Stoker from Queensland, LNP. Now, this might sound a little bit wonkish, but I want to explore this because I picked it up somewhere else. Maybe it was on the Quillette website as well. But this debate that Amanda has picked up on in America between what's called national conservatism and classical liberalism. And it hangs off a particular conference that was held there. And this tendency from some conservatives on our side of the ledger, perhaps going a bit far, and wanting to legislate morality, perhaps have a more interventionist economic policy, i.e. on tariffs and this sort of thing. Are you across that debate? Because I'm sensing it's going to be a fairly important one for conservatives to understand. And I'm sorry to my audience if this sounds a little bit insider baseball, but ideas have consequences. And I'm just interested, whenever sort of a bit of a rupture appears on our side, I think we need to get across these things.
Well, it's sort of where the Republicans are going now. I think that's what Amanda was definitely touching on.
So she didn't mention the Trump phenomenon. So this is the Trump economic nationalists, populists versus traditional Republicans. That's what she's picking up on there, is it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. And basically that it's more important now, I think, for liberalism to trade liberalization, this sort of stuff. I don't think that's the right route to go down. All this sort of stuff, because again, we'll see. But again, it comes from this urge of national sovereignty, because those, again, back on what Morris has written about the global reset, all these political elites, they're chipping away at us, and everyone is becoming disillusioned. The worker feels like they're missing out. They haven't seen wage rises in years.
Yep.
And that's exactly what those conservatives are tapping into. They're tapping into that sentiment there, and they want to, which rightly or wrongly, but they want to rectify that and to right wrongs. And they feel that the best way to do that is to, as you say, legislate, regulate this sort of stuff, and put tariffs. It's this nationalism streak, isn't it?
Yep. Now. I sense that Amanda is saying that's not a good thing, but again, I'm a little bit torn because I think it's a reaction against jobs going offshore as a result of globalism. So that's where this nationalism comes. Let's bring our manufacturing back home, which is Trump's big thing.
Which is the energy debate again. It all goes in a circle, doesn't it?
Yeah. So there's this tension within our side between classical liberalism and economic nationalism, populism. Nationalism can be used as a dirty word. People associate it with fascism, but it's really, regaining, and that's the pejorative that the left use, but it's really us trying to regain our sovereignty again and not become slaves to, some globalist agenda that sends all our jobs offshore and keeps us poor. All that to say, I think this is an important debate that you guys have unearthed here that we need to get across. Jake, just conscious of the time, I know that you said you didn't want this book to be, negative against the political class, but there are some critical elements to it. And I think Peter Credlin and yourself both, in her preface and your introduction, you both referenced disappointment that we've had a conservative government for 8 or 9 years now, and it really has been light on action, and totally. I don't want to see Labor get in, and I think it's so important that we don't get so disillusioned, we don't, create a worse problem. But I think you wrote the phrase, the pesky political class never misses an opportunity to do something.
That's true. That's
How do we get
true.
over our frustration with our side of politics without throwing the baby out with the bathwater?
Well, there's no political courage anymore, Lyle. I think that's the short answer. If you speak out, you remain on the backbench forever, and therefore you don't get promoted. That's basically how it is. I mean, something needs to change. Unfortunately, the game that they're in is votes. Everything's about votes. So if the primary vote went down so far, someone has to be in there, step in the party room and say, hey, this isn't working. This isn't working. We need to take back control. And I'd like to see that happen. I mean, we're chasing a fourth term, and I'm not really sure what the big achievements are. The ABC has never been more out of control. We give them $1.1 billion of taxpayers' money. Why not move them to a streaming service? I don't understand that. They have like 55 radio stations or something like that. There are heaps of things that could be done. Nuclear energy we touched on. I don't
Freedom
know
of speech. 18C.
Oh, 18C, that's right.
Reforming state-based anti-discrimination laws, which is all 18C at a state level.
Yeah,
all of this sort of stuff. No freedom of speech. Nothing's been done in these areas.
Well, even with the it's the funny thing. I was thinking about it the other day. I mean, we had the electric vehicle debate. I mean, Scott Morrison went into the 2019 election basically saying that electric vehicles, if we introduce them here, well, that will be the end of the great Australian weekend. You won't be able to get in the car and drive 3 hours away or something and come back. You have to charge it, and it's going to be chaotic. So we oppose Labor's EV policy. Yet the other week, we basically not only embrace it, but go a step further. And it's like this net zero stuff. I mean, we did not go into the last election promising to go net zero. And then all of a sudden we just cave in. I don't know why we don't. And I mean, this is why the book was written, I guess. Why don't we stand up and basically, why don't we be principled for once and say, if you don't like it, this is what we stand for. If you don't like it, use the Chris Bowen line, don't vote for us. And if they do vote us out, well, then post the election, we have to reflect and go, well, okay, clearly this is a big issue and the public want us to do something about it. So let's tweak our policy. That's how politics should be done. Whereas we don't stand for anything anymore. I mean, a lot of people don't see the difference between Labor and Liberal, and that's a fair enough point. I'm a Liberal through and through, but I can really, I do sort of empathise with those arguments when people come to me and say, I don't know what the difference is.
Yeah, well, this election, of course, we're going to see. We've got Clive Palmer and Craig Kelly. Hundreds of millions of dollars going to that campaign. You've got the Liberal Democrats. You've got this real splintering that's going on. One Nation, of course. So the centre right is fracturing dangerously. Do you think we might end up with a period in the wilderness where we learn to regain our spine and to come back actually fighting for something? Do you think if the government does get a fourth term, it might be rewarding bad behaviour and we may
that's true. Well, that's the problem, isn't it? Because Labor is so bad, and I wrote that in my introduction in this book. It's no longer good enough to win by default, and that's the thing, isn't it? I mean, whenever I speak to people, like, oh, but Anthony Albanese and Labor, we can't stand them, and I agree with that too. But
I do too.
It's just terrible. It's terrible that's how. Yeah. It's a shame that we embrace that mediocrity. Basically, that we just go, oh, well, our side's better than the other side. I mean, no, but you have to, there's no point being in power if you don't do something.
Yep.
And I think, and that's what I'm getting frustrated about. And I think many people are.
Yeah, absolutely. Jake, I know I said, could I have 10 or 15 minutes of your time? You've given me 30 minutes. It's been a great conversation. Right. I've really enjoyed it. I know we could talk all day. I want to thank you for putting this anthology of political essays of some of the brightest centre-right thinkers in Australia. Australia Tomorrow, yep. That's it. Get your copy from, where's the best place to get a Connor Court, or is there another place? What's your suggestion?
Look, Amazon Australia. Amazon Australia is it's in the politics section there. It's on the charts. You can go to connorcourtpublishing.com.au, or you could go to austomorrow.com.au, austomorrow.com.au. And it's available also now in hardback.
Wow, very good. Well, it sold over
Yeah.
6,000 copies, folks. Get your this is your essential summer reading. We've got a long summer
Yes.
coming up. Important to get refreshed. Jake, really appreciate your time. Congratulations again on on both the book and what you're doing with Alan Jones on this new digital platform. And it's just so encouraging to see the next generation of conservative thinkers and thought leaders like yourself coming on and coming forward with initiatives like this. So really appreciate your time on the Macquarie Street
Thank you,
Political
Lyle.
Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.